The grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with crystal chandeliers and white roses, every detail perfect for my cousin Emma's wedding. 300 guests mingled during cocktail hour, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos creating a sea of understated wealth and social prominence. I stood near the bar in my simple navy dress, department store not designer, watching my family work the room like the social professionals they were. I'm Jessica Chin, though my family had taken to introducing me with creative disclaimers lately. This is our Jessica, she's between opportunities. At 31, I was the black sheep who'd walked away from a prestigious consulting career to chase what they called tech fantasies. What they didn't know was that those fantasies had built me a company worth more than everyone in this room combined. Jessica, darling, my Aunt Margaret approached with her signature air kiss greeting. I heard you're working with computers now. How modern of you. I smiled politely, taking a sip of champagne. Something like that. Well, everyone needs hobbies, she continued, then leaned closer conspiratorially. Your father mentioned you might be looking for something more stable soon. My friend Sandra runs a lovely boutique in the village. She could probably use help with inventory. A boutique. Inventory. I bit back the urge to mention that my hobby employed over 10,000 people across 6 countries, or that my last quarterly revenue exceeded the GDP of some small nations. That's very thoughtful, I replied instead. Across the room I watched my father, Dr. Richard Chin, holding court with his medical colleagues. Distinguished silver hair, perfectly pressed tuxedo, radiating the kind of authority that came from 30 years of cardiac surgery. He'd built his reputation on precision, control, and never showing weakness. Having a daughter who played with computers, instead of following a respectable professional path, was his personal nightmare. My mother, Elizabeth, glided between groups with practiced grace, her Chanel gown and understated jewelry marking her as old money despite our family's more modest origins. She'd married up when she caught my father's attention during his residency, and she'd spent the last 3 decades perfecting the art of social navigation. Jessica. My brother David appeared at my elbow, looking every inch the successful investment banker in his bespoke suit. Mom's looking for you. Something about the family photos. Lead the way, I said, following him through the crowd. We found the family gathered near the ornate fireplace, photographer arranging us by height and importance. Emma, radiant in her Vera Wang gown, beamed beside her new husband. Her parents, my Uncle Thomas and Aunt Patricia, flanked them proudly. The extended family filled in around them. Doctors, lawyers, business executives, all exactly what they appeared to be. And then there was me. Jessica, dear, the photographer called out, could you move to the back? Behind your cousin Michael. I slipped into position, familiar with being tucked away where my failure wouldn't show too prominently in family documentation. Michael, a corporate lawyer, gave me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. Don't worry, Jess, he whispered. Everyone goes through rough patches. You'll figure it out. If only he knew that my last rough patch involved deciding whether to accept Goldman Sachs' acquisition offer or take my company public. I'd chosen neither, preferring to maintain control while we expanded into artificial intelligence. After photos, the family scattered back to their social duties. I was heading toward the terrace for some air when I overheard my father's voice from behind a marble pillar. Don't mention what Jessica does, he was saying to my great-uncle William and his wife. It's embarrassing. She left a perfectly good consulting position to play with computers. We're hoping she'll come to her senses soon. Great-uncle William made a sympathetic noise. Young people today, they all think they can be entrepreneurs. No understanding of real work. Exactly, my father continued. She's living in some tiny apartment, driving a beat-up Honda, pretending she's building some kind of tech company. It's been 3 years of this nonsense. What kind of tech company? Great-aunt Helen asked. Something called Neuralink Technologies, my father said with evident distaste. Sounds like science fiction to me. Elizabeth and I are at our wits' end. Neuralink Technologies. My little company that had revolutionized machine learning, held over 200 patents, and had partnerships with every major tech giant in Silicon Valley. The same company that President Biden had mentioned in his State of the Union address as representing America's technological leadership. But to my father it was just embarrassing. I was about to slip away when Emma's wedding planner appeared, tapping a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Please take your seats. Dinner will be served shortly, but first, we have a special surprise for Emma and James. The lights dimmed as massive screens descended from the ceiling. Emma's father has arranged for us to watch tonight's big game during dinner. Nothing says romance like the Super Bowl. A cheer went up from the crowd. Uncle Thomas had always been a football fanatic, and apparently he'd convinced Emma that sharing the big game with their wedding guests would be memorable. The screens flickered to life just as the game was returning from halftime. And now, the announcer's voice boomed through the ballroom sound system, one of our most anticipated commercials of the night. I nearly choked on my champagne. This wasn't just any commercial break. This was the moment I'd been preparing for since my marketing team pitched the idea 6 months ago. Our first major brand campaign, designed to introduce Neuralink technologies to mainstream America. The screen filled with a sleek, futuristic laboratory. A young woman in a lab coat turned to face the camera, her eyes bright with innovation and possibility. "What if your phone could think?" she asked. "What if your car could learn? What if artificial intelligence could solve humanity's greatest challenges?" My father's voice carried across the silent ballroom. "Elizabeth, isn't that?" The camera pulled back to reveal the woman standing in front of a massive logo. Neuralink Technologies. Then my face appeared on screen, not the department store dress version standing in the ballroom, but the polished CEO version my company had spent a fortune perfecting. "I'm Jessica Chin, founder and CEO of Neuralink Technologies," my recorded voice said confidently. "For the past 5 years, we've been building the future of human-AI collaboration." The commercial continued, showing our technology in action. Smart cities, medical diagnostics, climate modeling, while my voice narrated our vision. At Neuralink, we don't just imagine tomorrow. We build it. The final shot showed me standing on the rooftop of our headquarters in Palo Alto, the San Francisco skyline glittering behind me. Neuralink Technologies. Intelligence redefined. The commercial ended. The ballroom remained silent except for the distant sounds of football commentary that nobody was listening to anymore. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward me like I was an exhibit that had suddenly come to life. The woman they'd been politely ignoring, the family disappointment hiding in the back row, was apparently a billionaire tech CEO with her face on national television. That was... Emma started, then stopped, her mouth hanging open. My father looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "Jessica?" I set down my champagne glass and smoothed my simple dress. "Yes, Dad. That commercial, that was you." "Yes, it was. But you said you were working on a small tech startup." I smiled, the same polite smile I'd been wearing all evening. "I never said it was small. You assumed that." Great-Uncle William, who moments earlier had been discussing my embarrassing career choices, now stared at me with new interest. "Neuralink Technologies. I've heard that name. Aren't you the company that just partnered with NASA?" "Among others," I confirmed. "We're providing AI systems for the Mars mission planning. Should be announced officially next week." Aunt Margaret, who'd suggested I work retail inventory, fumbled for her phone. "I need to Google something," she muttered, then looked up with wide eyes. "Forbes says you're worth, it says here $12 billion. "Approximately," I replied. "The valuation fluctuates with market conditions." The silence stretched until David finally found his voice. "12 billion? Jessica, that makes you the richest person in this room," I finished. "By several $1 billion, actually." Uncle Thomas, father of the bride, looked like he might faint. "But the apartment, the car." "I own 73 properties across 4 countries," I said. "The apartment in Soma is just convenient to the office. And the Honda has great safety ratings. When you're worth 12 billion, you can drive whatever makes you happy." My mother had gone completely pale. "Jessica, why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what, Mom? That I was successful? When was I supposed to do that? During the lectures about abandoning my consulting career? The suggestions that I get a real job? The family gatherings where you introduced me as your daughter who was finding herself?" The wedding guests had formed a semicircle around us, creating an impromptu amphitheater for our family drama. Emma's perfect wedding had become the Jessica Chin revelation show. "We thought you were struggling," my father said weakly. "I was struggling," I agreed. "Struggling to build revolutionary technology while my own family acted like I was unemployed." struggling to maintain relationships with people who saw my life's work as a phase I'd grow out of. I pulled out my phone, opening my notes app. Would you like to see my schedule for next week? Monday, keynote at the World Economic Forum. Tuesday, Senate hearing on AI regulation where I'm the primary witness. Wednesday, meeting with the Secretary of Defense about national security applications. Thursday, lunch with the President's science advisor. Friday, I'm delivering the graduation address at MIT. Each item on the list hit my family like a physical blow. These weren't just business meetings, they were the kind of high-level engagements that made headlines. The President's science advisor? David repeated numbly. Dr. Patricia Williams. We've been collaborating on the National AI Initiative. I looked around at my family's stunned faces. She actually suggested I run for Congress next year. Said the country needs more tech leaders in government. Cousin Michael, who'd earlier offered me career sympathy, was scrolling frantically through his phone. There's an article here from last month. The most powerful women in tech, you're number 3, behind only the CEOs of Apple and Microsoft. Number 2 actually, I corrected. The rankings were updated after our partnership with Google was announced. Great Aunt Helen grabbed her husband's arm. William, remember that technology stock you said we should invest in? The one your broker recommended. Neuralink. He looked sick. We bought 100 shares at $12 each. Said it was speculative but promising. I smiled. It closed yesterday at $847 per share. Your 100 shares are worth about $85,000 now. His eyes bulged. We made $85,000? You invested in my company without knowing it, I confirmed. Happens more often than you'd think. About 60% of Fortune 500 companies use our AI systems in some capacity. The football game played on, forgotten while my family processed their new reality. The commercial had been scheduled to air during the Super Bowl because our marketing team wanted maximum impact for our brand launch. They probably hadn't anticipated it would also launch me out of family obscurity and into legendary status. Emma finally found her voice. Jessica, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell us you were building something this big? I looked at my cousin, beautiful and radiant in her wedding dress, and felt a familiar pang of sadness. Because none of you asked, Emma. In 3 years, not one person in this family asked me to explain what I was actually building. You just assumed I was failing because my version of success didn't look like yours. But we could have supported you, my mother protested. We could have been proud of you. You could have, I agreed. Instead, you spent 3 years being embarrassed by me. Dad literally just told Uncle William not to mention what I do because it's embarrassing. My father's face crumpled. Jessica, I didn't understand. You didn't try to understand, I said gently but firmly. There's a difference. The wedding planner appeared again, clearly flustered by the disruption to her carefully planned evening. Excuse me, but should we continue with dinner service? Of course, Emma said quickly. This is still my wedding. Jessica, please sit with us at the head table. I want to hear everything. I glanced at the head table where seating had been arranged by family importance and social status. My assigned seat was at table 7, tucked safely away with the distant relatives and family friends. That's very kind, I said, but I actually need to leave soon. I have a conference call with our Tokyo office in an hour, and then I'm flying to London tonight for a meeting with the Prime Minister's Technology Council. The casual mention of the Prime Minister hit like another bombshell. My family was learning that their embarrassing daughter apparently moved in the highest circles of global power. You're leaving? My father asked. But we need to talk. I need to apologize. To understand. I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time in years. We can talk, Dad. But it needs to be different than before. No more assumptions about what I should be doing with my life. No more suggestions that I get a real job. And definitely no more hiding me from relatives because my career choices embarrass you. He nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Whatever you want. What I want, I said, is what I've always wanted. A family that supports each other's dreams instead of judging them. A family that asks questions instead of making assumptions. A family that celebrates different kinds of success instead of only recognizing one narrow path. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Car is waiting. Tokyo call in 45 minutes. I really do need to go, I said, gathering my small purse. Emma, congratulations on a beautiful wedding. I'm sorry the commercial timing was so dramatic. Emma hugged me tightly. Are you kidding? This is the most memorable wedding in family history. My grandchildren will be talking about the night cousin Jessica revealed she was a billionaire. As I headed toward the exit, my family followed like a confused entourage. They seemed unable to process that the person they'd been treating as a charity case was now walking away from them to conduct international business. Jessica, my mother called out. When can we see you again? When can we really talk? I paused at the ballroom entrance. I'll be back from London next Thursday. We could have dinner if you'd like. But Mom, I want you to understand something. I'm the same person I was an hour ago. The only thing that's changed is your perception of my worth. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. I understand. And Jessica? I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. For the first time that evening, my smile was completely genuine. Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me. As I walked through the hotel lobby toward my waiting car, I could hear the buzz of conversation resuming in the ballroom. By tomorrow, the story would be family legend. The wedding where Jessica Chin went from embarrassment to tech royalty in the span of a 60-second commercial. My driver held the door open. Airport, Miss Chin? Yes, please. And Marcus? Could you put on the radio? I'd like to hear if they're discussing the commercial on the post-game show. As we pulled into traffic, the radio host's voice filled the car. That Neuralink Technologies spot was definitely one of tonight's most impressive ads. The company's stock is already up 12% in after-hours trading. I smiled, settling back in my seat. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's succeeding so spectacularly that your success becomes impossible to ignore. My phone showed 17 missed calls from family members and 43 text messages. I'd read them on the plane. Right now, I had a conference call to Tokyo, where my team was finalizing our expansion into quantum computing. The family who'd spent 3 years being embarrassed by my career would just have to wait. After all, I had a $12 billion empire to run. 3 weeks later, I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor of Neuralink Tower, reading the morning's press coverage. The wedding commercial had generated more media attention than our marketing team had ever imagined. We'd been featured on the cover of Time magazine, profiled in Harvard Business Review, and I'd just finished a lengthy interview with 60 Minutes about the future of artificial intelligence. My assistant knocked on the door. Miss Chin, your father is here for your lunch appointment. Send him in, please. My father entered, looking smaller somehow in his simple business suit. Gone was the commanding presence I'd grown up intimidating. In its place was a man genuinely humbled by his own misconceptions. Jessica, he said, taking the chair across from my desk. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Of course, Dad. You're my father. He looked around the office, taking in the panoramic city views, the awards lining the walls, the multiple monitors displaying real-time data from our global operations. I've been doing research, he said finally. About your company, about what you've built. Jessica, I had no idea the scope of what you've accomplished. I tried to tell you, I said gently. Multiple times. But you were so focused on what you thought I should be doing that you never listened to what I was actually doing. He nodded, looking down at his hands. The cardiac surgery field is very traditional. Success looks a certain way. Medical school, residency, fellowship, hospital position, private practice. I couldn't understand how someone could build something meaningful outside that structure. But I did build something meaningful. We're not just making money, Dad. We're solving problems that matter. Our medical AI has already diagnosed diseases that human doctors missed. Our climate modeling is helping prevent natural disasters. Our transportation systems are making cities safer and more efficient. I know, he said. I spent last week reading every article I could find about Neuralink. Your work on early cancer detection. Jessica, that's going to save millions of lives. For the first time in years, I heard genuine pride in his voice. That's what I've been trying to tell you. This isn't just about computers or making money. It's about using technology to solve human problems on a scale that was never possible before. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city bustling below us. Your mother wants to have a family dinner, he said eventually. A real one where we actually listen to each other. Where we celebrate what you've accomplished instead of trying to fix what we thought was broken. I'd like that, I said. But Dad, there's something else we need to discuss. I turned to my computer, pulling up a foundation website. I've been thinking about legacy, about what really matters. So I'm starting the Chin Foundation for Educational Innovation. The goal is to provide STEM education and entrepreneurship training to underserved communities. His eyes lit up as he read the mission statement. This is wonderful, Jessica. How can we help? Actually, I was hoping you'd consider joining the board. Your medical background would be invaluable for our healthcare innovation initiatives. And Mom's experience with nonprofit management could help us structure our educational programs. You want us involved? I want my family involved in something meaningful. Not because you're trying to fix me, but because we can accomplish more together than apart. My phone chimed with a reminder. I have to go soon, meeting with the Joint Chiefs about cybersecurity. But Dad, there's one more thing. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a framed photo. It was from my college graduation, the day I'd announced my intention to start a tech company. In the picture, my father was shaking his head while my mother looked worried. I was smiling, completely confident in my vision despite their disapproval. I've kept this on my desk for 8 years, I said, as a reminder of why I was working so hard. Not to prove you wrong, but to prove myself right. He studied the photo, his face softening. You were so sure of yourself even then. I believed in what I was building. I just wish you had believed in me too. I believe in you now, he said firmly. And Jessica, for what it's worth, I'm incredibly proud to be your father. Even if it took me too long to realize what an extraordinary woman you've become. As he left, I turned back to my computer, opening the agenda for our board meeting that afternoon. We were discussing our expansion into educational technology, partnerships with major universities, and the development of AI tutoring systems that could personalize learning for every student. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Saw you on the cover of Time. Dad's framing it for the office. You're officially the family's favorite success story now. I smiled, looking out over the city that had become the headquarters of my empire. Being the family's favorite success story was nice, but it wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that I'd built something meaningful, something that would outlast quarterly earnings and magazine covers. Something that would make the world better long after the wedding commercial was forgotten. Though I had to admit the commercial had been pretty effective. Our stock was up 40% since the Super Bowl, and we'd received over 10,000 resumes from talented engineers who wanted to join our mission. Sometimes the best marketing strategy is simply being too successful to ignore. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Chin, your car is ready for the Pentagon meeting. I gathered my files, straightened my jacket, and headed out to my next appointment. Just another day in the life of the family embarrassment who accidentally became a billionaire tech mogul. The wedding story had already become family legend, but I was just getting started. After all, revolutionizing artificial intelligence was only the beginning of what I planned to accomplish. And this time my family would be watching with pride instead of embarrassment.